The 564th edition of the MMA Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Best Ball Mania is live with $15 million in prizes. Sign up with the promo code MMA SGPN to claim your special pick and first-time deposit offer of up to $250 in bonus cash. UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code MMA SGPN. We're also brought to you by Royal Retros. Royal Retros has jerseys, t-shirts, hats, jackets, and sweatshirts from all the old school teams that you love. Use promo code SGPN for 10% off your order today. That's SGPN at royalretros.com.
Howdy ho, Degenerinos. Welcome to episode 564 of the MMA Gambling Podcast and the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. This one, of course, is dedicated to all the mothers out there who may be tricked into listening and or watching our show. And to all their, basically all their listeners and viewers are called something that starts with the word mother anyhow. So this goes out to all of it. This goes out to you all, to all the people. Thank you for coming to the show. I'm one of your host, Jeff Chalks Fox. We got a hybrid episode for you today. We'll do a quick recap of UFC St. Louis. We don't want to dive into it because it wasn't a good card for our picks, and it wasn't a
good card to watch.
Exactly, it wasn't a good card. Period. So, and then since you degens want some action, we're going to give you LFA today. LFA's got a pretty solid event going down this coming weekend from California. We will give you all the picks. Well, we'll give you top 5 fights that my co-host enjoys, and then maybe you'll throw a lightning round in there for you and give you some picks for other fights in the card. So let's get right down to it. It's a busy day on the show, obviously. And I'm not doing it alone. I refer to a co-host. You heard a different voice. And if you're watching, you see someone else on the screen too. It will be Daniel Gumby Vreeland. Hello.
Yeah, let's just talk about just how atrocious UFC St. Louis is, because not only, I mean, we got everything that we expected, right? Big Derek Lewis KO, judges being judges. Like, it was just, like one of those cards, but also like in a lot of cases, like not in even a particularly fun way, right? Like we stole one probably with Tabitha Ricci over Tisha Pennington, right? Like, and you could also say maybe we stole one in Sean Woodson. I know some people thought Caceres won that fight. I kind of lean.
No, Woodson. I don't think so.
Yeah, I kind of lean Woodson too. He just does more damage. And so like there were rough judges' decisions, but it wasn't even like they were rough judges' decisions because they were like, it was like a fun nail biter fight, right? Like the only like real fun fight was probably Trey Waters versus Billy Goff.
Yeah, that was fun.
And people complained about those scorecards too. Although I just think, like 1 and 3 was a coin flip. So if you landed on heads for both of those, you might get a 30-27 scorecard. But regardless, like the Ricci versus Pennington fight, not a lot of fun. Like when Ricci was holding on to her, I was just like, good, keep doing that, even though it's super boring, because I'm pretty sure it's the only way you're gonna win. So like, yeah, and then Derek Lewis decided to be boring for 2 rounds somehow.
Yep. And then he became Derek Lewis again. So
yeah.
Yep.
It's funny that he was like, I need to evolve. I need to have a ground game. I need to show you guys that I have all these skills. And we watched 2 rounds of it and we're like, dude, we don't care. Just throw throw that right hook we know is going to end it. Because that's why we watch you. And then he did.
Yep. Star of the show, Chase Hooper. How scary was he? He's pretty scary.
I mean, so here's my question for you. Every single time I watch Chase Hooper, I am left baffled trying to figure out if he's good or not. Because we watched him beat Nick Fiore, right? And we were like, oh, his striking looks much better. And then in his next fight, we're like, oh, his striking doesn't look any better. He tagged Slava. Did his hands look better before that, or am I just remembering that he tagged Slava and I'm like, whoa?
No, he looked like Chase Hooper before that, but
yeah, like the punches come from too far down on his side. They're a little heavy on the arms and not so much on the body. And then like he did land the big one, and he seems to be like growing into his frame a little bit, right? Like he seems a little stronger, a little thicker.
Yep,
maybe
for sure
working with a strength and conditioning guy, but like,
yep.
And his ground game is elite. Like we already knew his ground game was elite, and if this went to the ground, Slava didn't stand much of a chance. But like, I don't know if I was left being like, oh, he's rounding his game out, or if like, oh, maybe we need to fade Slava all the time, no matter what.
Yeah. And his beard looked really bad too. I should know. I know about bad looking beards. So
he's got a Jeff Fox looking get up going on.
Yeah,
much
great.
shorter, much smaller, but he's got the Jeff Fox going on. He's
that's what I want to hear for sure.
Going for a look.
For sure, especially when that thing started growing on his head partway through the fight. Definitely. All right. I went 5-7. Gummy went 6-6. So it wasn't a good night for the picks. We did both hit our prop picks. That was nice. Gummy Alberg would be a knockout. Alberg looked very good too. Well,
oh yeah, that's one. He's probably
his opponent looked dumb. His opponent looked silly, and he looked good. So.
But like, how many times has Alonzo Menefield did that to a light heavyweight and they didn't handle it?
Yeah,
and so Alberg handled it. That's important.
Yep, that was good. So Gumby had him via knockout at -105. I had Ricci decision +120. So it was nasty, but you got the job done. That's all that matters. So and the UFC is back in this coming weekend with the fight card. Barboza versus Murphy. If Gumby says it's bad, it's really bad.
It's bad.
Yeah. So we don't even need to bother. We'll go through it on Wednesday and Thursday. We'll give you all the badness. Maybe there'll be good picks. Maybe there'll be good underdogs because there wasn't any last night hitting for us. Neither of us hit it on underdog last night either. So it was a not a good night. And I think it was a bloodbath in the Discord too. Was it not?
There were people hitting props, which I think is good. Chosen One, shout out Chosen One. He seemed like he was lighting it up. So
good.
Sometimes we get some, and I think everybody was a team right on Ricci. So the MMA gods gave us one. So
yep. All right. So yeah, like you said, back to the Apex. So you know what that means this coming week. All right. Before we jump into some winning picks for you, it's baseball season. And whether you're a hardcore baseball fan or just a degenerate sitting in the office looking for some afternoon action, we got the spot for you to go to. The MLB Gambling Podcast, of course. Subscribe to it wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you watch or subscribe on YouTube as well. Actually, subscribe for sure. And then whether you choose to watch, that's up to you. All right. LFA 184, Diaz versus Lewis is going down this coming Friday night, 10 p.m. Eastern time from Commerce, California. The Commerce Casino and Hotel in Commerce, California. We got 10 fights on the card. We're going to break down in full half of them, 5 of them, and then Gumby. Do you have a lightning round prepared for?
I got 2 that I kind of like, so okay, cool. I'll get those to you.
Very, very good. So we are going to jump into now that I scroll up to it. A pretty solid LFA card from what I gather here. It's a solid non-title fight LFA card.
Yeah, I'm calling this LFA 184 Contender Series tryouts.
Okay.
I think any of the 5 guys who win on the 5 fights we break down today, whoever wins either of the fight would not be surprised to see that person in Contender Series.
Yeah, some of these people have been in the UFC before and or on Contender Series as well. So it's kind of different that way. LFA usually has the people on the way up. A few of these people may be on their way down. We'll see. All right, we'll start off with a flyweight fight on the main card. Cody Davis, Rodney Kealohi, right? I take it he's from Hawaii.
Yeah, I think I don't know if he's from Hawaii or if he has like Hawaiian heritage, but
right. He's American. Okay, he's American. No odds have dropped yet for LFA, but Gummy's pretty good at predicting these. And if he's not good, then you'll know that something is askew with the odds, and you should act accordingly. All right, Kealohi is the captain. He's 7-4, 5 knockouts, 1 submission. Knocked out. He's been knocked out twice, submitted once. 2-2 in LFA. Win over his last 3, and 2-3 over his last 5. Did win his last fight via submission. He's fight at bantamweight, 2 inches taller and 2 inches reach over Davis. Davis, 8-2 with 1 knockout, 3 submissions. He's been knocked out once, 4-2 in the LFA. Former champion of this here promotion here. He's gone 3-1 over his last 4, but did lose his last fight via TKO. So we got a former champ in our opening fight here.
Yeah, I'm going to say Cody Davis comes in here as a big favorite as a result of that, right? Both his record looks a little bit better than Kealohi. He's had a higher level of competition, and then he's had the belt too, right? Like, that's all you really need to know that he's probably going to be a negative 250, maybe even like negative 300 favorite here. And I'm going to go with Cody Davis. I like his matchup in this one quite a bit, mostly because if you watch Kealohi's fights, he tends to want to get his wrestling going a little bit. And against Cody Davis, I just think that's not feasible in any way, shape, or form. He's best when he's striking if his opponent is afraid of the takedowns. And I think in this case, Davis isn't really afraid of the takedowns at all of Kealohi because he's so much better of a wrestler. I will also just add in here too that when Kealohi, he's a guy who likes to switch stances a lot. And if he's not getting anything going with the wrestling, sometimes he gets caught with his feet even to his shoulders, like square to his opponent, which just makes him so easy to take down. Now, he's usually the aggressor in the takedown, so the person he's fighting hasn't always taken advantage of that. But my God, will Cody Davis take advantage of that, right? Like, he is going to get blast doubled and put on his back. I also just like Cody Davis's top control. I think he does a really good job from there holding his opponents. He gets good ground and pound going. So I think the wrestling here of Cody Davis is going to be a little bit too much for Kealohi, especially because it'll also break up his striking because he's not afraid of him.
There you go. Winning pick right out the gate. And he's even telling you how he's going to do. He's going to blast him with doubles. All right. We're moving up the card, up a couple weight classes to featherweight. Lerryan Douglas from Brazil. Nathan Ghareeb.
Ghareeb. Yeah.
Ghareeb from the United States. What's with all you Americans and your difficult names today? 3 5-minute rounds at featherweight. Ghareeb is nasty, if you say so. He's 9-2, 6 knockouts, 2 submissions, never been finished in a fight. This is his LFA debut. He's won 3 straight and 7 of 8. 4 straight wins have come via finish. He's got multiple regional championships on his
mantle.
Correct. Get the shirt. I'm wearing it right now. If you can see it on the old YouTuber. Sportsgamblingpodcast.com/store, or get sticky, or get both. Used to fight at lightweight, and he went 0-1 in Bellator. That was Ghareeb. Douglas, Dougie is the nickname. Dougie Douglas, 9-5, 3 knockouts, 2 submissions. He's been knocked out twice, submitted twice. 1-1 in LFA. Lost win over his last 4. He did win his last fight via knockout. Was regional champion. Used to fight at bantamweight. 2 years younger than Ghareeb, 2 inches taller. Over to Mr. Gumby.
Yeah, I think Ghareeb's going to be a huge favorite here. We're probably talking like negative 375 or something like that. And that's because he's coming with that Bellator background, and he's had a lot of high level fights despite being on the regional scene. And I actually think he's probably one of those guys who's moving over to LFA right now because the PFL Bellator merger kind of just pushed him out of Bellator. And now he's going to try his hand at winning an LFA fight or two and seeing if he can get on Contender Series. I'm actually going to go dog here. I like Lerryan Douglas in this fight. He's probably going to be plus 325 or something like that. Like, he'll be a big dog here because, like I said, like Ghareeb, he's been everywhere and fought everywhere and won a whole bunch of titles and has looked good doing it. And Douglas, what did you say? He was 9-5 in his career.
Yep.
Ugly record. Doesn't look like very much, but if you watch him fight, he's so much better than his record shows. He's got like one of those piston jabs that, like, first of all, it breaks noses or bloodies people up real quick. Makes them hesitant to move forward. And when he unloads on his hooks, which they can be a little wide sometimes. Like, sometimes he doesn't keep them all that tight, but when he unloads on a hook, there's so much power from Douglas. He's so quick and he generates so much power that I think he is going to have a massive advantage on the feet here. Because the thing about Ghareeb is he's very good in terms of jiu-jitsu. Like, his jiu-jitsu game is certainly ready to be on Contender Series. I don't think his striking is. I think he's really slow on the feet. I've been back and forth on his wrestling. Like, I've seen times where I'm like, oh, that shot looked really good. And then other times where I'm like, I don't know, maybe he can't wrestle at all. And so, like, for me, if he's getting hit with that jab on the way in, I think it's going to deter a lot of the entrants. And it's also going to make it so that he shoots from farther away. He has a tougher time with range. And if that's the case, Douglas is just going to punish him with his hooks and his jabs. So I like Douglas here as a big underdog. I imagine Ghareeb, with all of his resume, is going to come in here as a favorite. And I would say gas that line on Douglas here.
And what's it going to start at? You said Ghareeb's going to be in like the 2 supplings,
No,
right?
I said he's going to be like negative high 3s probably. And
Okay,
you're probably going to get Douglas right around, like plus 300 or a little bit over that.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think people love Ghareeb, and I'm just not sold yet.
Let's go Dougie Douglas, right? Let's go. Let's also go over to Underdog Fantasy. The NBA playoffs are here, and our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy, wants to make it a lot more interesting. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. Playing their pick'em game is as simple as selecting higher or lower on player stats like points, rebounds, assists, and so much more. Make entries of all basketball or mix and match across your other favorite sports. You can win up to 100 times your money, and it's a ton of fun. Underdog is available in 30 plus states, including California, Texas, Canada, and they also just launched Champions, their player versus player format in Florida. Make sure you go to underdogfantasy.com, check it out. New customers get a pick 'em special in the lobby when they sign up, and they always have specials today, like daily specials in there as well. They're also running a ton of different promos, bonus cash, airdrops, specials, giveaways, and more throughout the NBA playoffs. So make sure to follow at Underdog Picks on Twitter to keep an eye out. Here's the important part. Make sure you sign up with our promo code MMA SGPN to claim your special pick and first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code MMA SGPN. All right, let's move on. This here fight card, we're up to a welterweight fight now. Jean-Paul Lebosnoyani. It's an American name again, Gumby. You Americans in your names today.
Lebosnoyani
versus Victor Kuiks. Kuiks is from the Netherlands. He is the striking Viking, and we're going to tell you about him first in this welterweight fight. Striking Viking is 5-1, 3 knockouts, 1 submission. This is his LFA debut. He's won 2 straight fights. He's fight at middleweight, 4 inches taller than Lebosnoyani, and 2 inches of reach. Lebosnoyani, Mufasa is the nickname, obviously. 6-2, 2 knockouts, 4 submissions. So he's finished everyone, and he's been knocked out twice. This man owes his rounds. Damn it. You should get that shirt sometime soon too. That should be created. He is 5-1 in LFA. 4-1 over his last 5. Won his last fight via TKO. He's fight at lightweight, was regional champion, and 6 years younger than the striking Viking.
The striking Viking is a sick nickname.
It is.
I think Lebosnoyani is going to be a slight favorite here, to mid favorite maybe, like negative 165, negative 170. He himself fought in was it a title fight? He fought Jacoby Big Toe.
Oh yeah, Big Toe.
I think he fought Jacoby Big Toe Jones.
Let me see. Yes.
Yeah, look at it. Yeah, and that was his law. Yeah. So
lightweight,
he fought
a lightweight title fight. Yeah.
Yeah. So he fought in a lightweight title fight. So I think in general, he's going to be a favorite based on the fact that he's been headlining LFA cards before. And not a lot of people know Victor Kuiks. So I'm going to say Lebosnoyani, negative 165. And I do like him in this fight. I'm going to pick him over the striking Viking here. And mostly just because Kuiks, if you watch him fight, first of all, he's very upright, which I don't necessarily mind so much, especially because he's going to have a height advantage here, and maybe that won't cost him. But also, like, it just seems to limit the amount of things he does. Like, he does, despite the nickname, the striking Viking, he does seem to like to get in on body lock takedowns. Like, he really loves for some reason, he really loves, like, lat drop takedowns. And, like, those are, first of all, very low percentage, but he's hit him on some pretty terrible wrestling opponents. And so, like, he seems to like those, but like it makes his wrestling game a little bit limited because he's so upright and he's so much taller than his opponent sometimes that he doesn't get down on the legs or seems hesitant to get down on the legs. And I think Lebosnoyani, look, I think he's kind of a sleeper in terms of the ground game. I wish he shot more takedowns. He seems to have just like fallen in love with his hands on the feet and kind of avoided the fact that he is like a jiu-jitsu ace when he gets there. So I think if Kuiks does get into the clinch and tries some of those lat drops, I think he's going to lose on the scramble. I think you're going to see Lebosnoyani lock in a submission and win there. And if it stays on the feet, Lebosnoyani, like I said, he's fallen in love with his power because it's landing, right? Like he's thrown some really big haymakers in there. And he's quick enough that I think quick enough in maybe quick's not the right word. He's tricky enough that I think his opponents are like confused by what he's doing all the time. He throws this fake followed by a kick. So he throws like a fake right hand and then throws a right kick on some of his like combinations. And it's like Very weird thing to see the fake coming from the exact same side that the strike comes from too. So he's like very awkward when it comes to that on the feet. And I think as a result, he kind of like sneaks up on his opponents too. It helps him get into the range he wants because he is going to be a little bit shorter here at welterweight now that he's moved up a weight class. But I think he's got a lot of advantages over Kuiks here. I think he's going to, out wrestle him, out grapple him, whatever he needs to do if he goes that way. But also I think just the power is better on the feet, and he's a little bit more, a little bit craftier on the feet.
All right, there we go. Let's move on to our co-main event. It is a bantamweight fight. Albert Morales, United States. Allan Begosso from Brazil. 3 5-minute rounds. Begosso is mini, according to him. That's his nickname. He's 8-3-1, 3 knockouts, 3 submissions. Never been finished in a fight himself. 4-2 in the LFA. He's 1-2 over his last 3, 2-3 over his last 5. Did win his last fight though. He went 0-1 on Contender Series. Gumby, who'd you lose to?
Begosso.
Put you on the spot.
I don't know that one.
Really?
I do remember him losing.
I forgot already too. Farid Basharat. So no shame in that game.
Man, that's a good one.
Yep.
The lesser Basharat. The lesser Basharat.
No, I thought oh yeah, that's right. Javid. I'm forgetting which brother is which nowadays. With all their brothers, which one's good, which one's not good. They're all morphing into one. All right. Begosso. So he lost there. He used to fight at flyweight, down weight class. 2014 pro MMA debut, 4 years younger than Morales. Morales is the Belizean warrior. He's 15-9-1, 7 knockouts, 5 submissions. He's been knocked out twice, submitted 4 times. This is his LFA debut. He's won 3 straight fights and 5 of 6. All of those wins have come via knockout or TKO. He went 1-4-1 in the UFC. So I told you, it's fighters may be going in the opposite direction in their careers as usually. It's not. This guy's not quite a prospect. 2-1 in Bellator. He's got multiple regional championships on his
mantle.
Correct. Get the shirt. sportsgamblingpodcast.com/store. Used to fight at featherweight. 1-0 as a pro grappler. 4 inches of height over Begosso. 3 inches of reach.
So I think Morales is obviously going to be an underdog despite being in the UFC. First of all, it was a million years ago. Like he was in the UFC, in my estimation, way too early. Because you're talking about how like he's maybe heading in the wrong direction. I actually think he's back to heading in the right direction, right? Like this is a guy, if you want to go back to when he was in the UFC, I had it pulled up. Hang on one second.
2016 is made his debut.
Yeah, so that's 8 years ago, and he's only 32. We make it sound like he's like an old guy who's, we're sort of putting out to pasture. He was just in the UFC too early. And if you look at the guys he fought when he was in the UFC too, they were legit. Like I believe his first fight was Thomas Almeida. And, Thomas Almeida didn't wind up being everything we thought he was. But like when he came to the UFC, that was a tough out right away. And other people on his resume are really tough too. So I think he's going to be an underdog here because of his kind of not so great past in the UFC. And Begosso seems to be on the upward trend too. So we're going to say like probably only like plus 145 for Morales here because he does have the UFC shine on his name too. If he didn't have that, it'd probably be worse. But I'm going to go with Morales. And the reason why is if you watch Begosso, and you don't just have to use this fight with Farid Basharat, because that one's, you can sort of throw that one to the wayside. That's a tough fight no matter what, and especially when you're a former flyweight. But if you watch most of his fights, he's got good footwork when he moves forward. He does a really good job of cutting off angles. He's a little hesitant in terms of throwing, like sometimes just like too many feints, not enough action. But when he's moving forward, he looks great. When he's moving backwards, he freaks out. Like if somebody blitzes him with a combination, his arms kind of flail. He looks flustered. He isn't quite ready to counter. Like this is a guy who needs to be first. And I think against Albert Morales, that's not an option. Albert Morales is a freaking wild man. He loves to brawl. It wound up being his downfall when he was only 24 in the UFC. But now that he's a little bit older and he's fighting, down in competition and he's sort of like rounded out his game, that wildness is still there, but it's like a little bit more nuanced now. Like he knows when he can let it go and when it's dangerous, and he moves out of range so he doesn't eat as many counters. But I think if he blitzes Begosso here, Begosso is going to panic. And I think there's a good chance he gets caught in that panic. And even if he doesn't get caught in that panic, I think there's a good chance that like he's just going to look bad on the scorecards, running away from all of these combinations or like kind of flailing his way out of them. So I'm going to go with probably a slight dog here in Albert Morales.
Good chance he's going to be a dog until everyone steams the lineup, which you degens would do.
Ditto with Lerryan Douglas. Make sure we steam that one good.
Doggy Douglas, don't forget him. All right, before we move on to our main event, let me tell you about a newer sponsor of ours, Royal Retros, looking to prove that you know ball. What better way than to showcase your old school fandom than with some old school gear from a classic team? Royal Retros has jerseys, t-shirts, hats, jackets, sweatshirts, and more from the vintage sports leagues and teams that you know and love. The Dirty Bird, the Orange Crush, or the Sack Exchange all make for sick jerseys for real fans, or Quebec Nordique gear, which I see they do have on there. So check it out on their site. Make sure you use promo code SGPN for 10% off your order today. That's code SGPN at royalretros.com to take 10% off today. All right, our main event. A couple of names that you hardcore degens will know. It is a light heavyweight fight, 3 5-minute rounds. Ozzy Diaz, Bevon Lewis. America versus America action. Bevon Lewis, of course, is the extraordinary gentleman. He is 7-4 with 3 gate knockouts. He's been knocked out twice, submitted once, 2-0 in LFA. However, he has lost 2 straight fights and only won 1 of his last 4. He got finished in his last 2 fights as well. He's 1-4, so he's only won 1 of his last 5. I believe he said 1 of his last 4, even worse than that. So he got finished in back-to-back fights. He's not fought since March of 2022. He's not won since January of 2020. He went 1-3 in the UFC. He went 2-0 on Contender Series. Used to fight up at heavyweight and down at welterweight. Diaz, 8-2, 6 knockouts, 2 submissions. He's been knocked out twice. 3-0 on LFA. Used to be their champion at middleweight. Now he's up at light heavyweight. 6-1 over his last 7. Won his last fight via TKO. He lost on the Contender Series to
Joe Pyfer.
Yes, beat Joe Pyfer. He went 2-0 in Bellator. Was regional champion, inch of height over Lewis.
So I imagine being the former champion, Ozzy Diaz is going to be a favorite. But the fact that Bevon Lewis has been in the UFC is probably going to keep that line down pretty far. Probably like. We'll say like negative 130 for Ozzy Diaz, probably like only plus 110 on the return for Bevon Lewis. And I'm going to go with Ozzy Diaz here. First of all, I feel like people forget how good he looked against Joe Pyfer until he got flatlined. Like he actually did, like he was backing Joe Pyfer up, which isn't an easy thing to do, as we've seen in the UFC, right? Like Joe Pyfer doesn't like to take steps backwards, and he had his back against the cage even when he got knocked out by Joe Pyfer. So, Ozzy Diaz's only loss in the last, however long has been to a guy who's a fringe top 15 UFC guy. He took a whole bunch of time off of that. He never really lost his middleweight title. He just decided to come back as a light heavyweight. It looked like he had a little bit of tough time finding his timing when he first came back, but then he really dialed in and he looked good. I think he's going to be a touch slower than Bevon Lewis here, but I think his striking is much sharper. I also think Bevon Lewis is just kind of like limited in the amount of things he's good at. Like it seems like he wants to just press people up against the cage and doesn't really have any ideas on what he wants to do with that, right? Like he doesn't throw any knees to the body or even those like annoying ones that people throw to the thigh repeatedly. He doesn't throw any of that. He doesn't try to throw like little body punches on the side. It doesn't look like he's trying to dip down for a double leg. Maybe he is, and he just can't find the entry. No elbows on the separation. Like it's just like kind of one note. That's why he had to fight on Contender Series twice. And if I'm remembering correctly, even when he beat Alton Cunningham, which is the second one on the UFC or in the Contender Series, I don't think he got a contract off of that. I think that was he wound up only getting a contract in short notice afterwards because Dana wasn't really fond of his like hugging against the cage. I don't know that that'll work against Ozzy Diaz. He circles away really well. He digs his underhooks. He's like not an easy guy to take down particularly. And I think he's going to be sharper on the feet here than Bevon Lewis. I think that, like the 1-2s and just like the crisper striking of Ozzy Diaz. On top of that, like the power of Ozzy Diaz. Like obviously, like you said, he's got a couple of knockouts recently. I think all that plays. So give me Ozzy Diaz, especially if he's only like a very small favorite.
What's the range you would take him in?
Getting up over negative 150 to negative 175, it starts to get up in that range. I'm probably just going to pass on this one because, again, he's a middleweight who moved up to light heavyweight. Mm-hmm. Bevon Lewis is really strong. I've only ever seen him at light heavyweight one time. He's fought one time in the last, his second to last fight was Joe Pyfer on Contender Series. Joe Pyfer has fought 100 times since then. So
Yeah.
You know, like we haven't seen enough of Diaz for me to like him if he gets, you know, the higher 100s or negative 200 here. But if he's down like close enough to a pick him, you know, the negative 130 range, I do like him there.
All right, recap, and then Gumby will give you a couple bonus picks here. He's got Diaz, he's got Morales, he's got Lebosnoyani, because he wants me to say the name. He's got Dougie Douglas, and he's got Davis. All right, lightning round. Gummy's got a couple of bonus picks for us.
All right, so there's a couple of guys I like here on the prelims. One is going to be a familiar name that you guys can see, and both of them, I'm guessing, are going to be underdogs. So the first one I like is Javier Reyes Rugales. He is from Venezuela. He's a fighter that not a lot of people have heard of because, you know, he hasn't been in LFA before and such. But he is 17-3 with a lot of those fights coming in Cambache. And I know Cambache is not really good at, like, publicizing their fighters, and they kind of do a shitty job of even like releasing a fight card before it's on. But like he has looked really great in his Cambache fights. And he's going to be fighting Chase Gibson, who's kind of a guy whose name has been around on the regional scene for a while. A good enough wrestler that like people would probably fade the guy just coming to LFA for the first time here. And you're probably going to find a nice number on him. But I think his hands are quicker. And as long as he keeps his feet, I think there's a good chance he comes out on top here. The other name that we're going to talk about here, and I know it burned us last time, but it's Oseuman Oyemolan. You guys remember last time I was really big into him when he was fighting Trent Miller. He looked really great for like 3 minutes in that fight and then just stuck his head in a guillotine and got himself guillotined. Like he looked great for as long as he was striking, and then was like, what if I shot a takedown despite not needing to shoot a takedown? And I think he probably learned from that fight. That fight wasn't even all that long ago. It was just back in December. And he's going to be fighting a guy who's 3-0 in Jake Woodley. You know, a guy who, again, I think is a prospecty type that people might be excited about, but also just in general, you see 3-0 on somebody's record and 2-2 on the other side. You assume this is a squash match that they're trying to get the 2 or 3-0 guy another win. I don't think that's the case. If Oseuman Oyemolan comes in as a big dog here, I think that there's definitely worth a sprinkle there because his range and his striking is definitely worth giving it a try. So yeah, Oseuman and Javier Rugales.
You just wanted to flex that you could say those names. It's the only reason you're taking those.
Do you want to try Oseuman Oyemolan?
I'm sure I have. Oseumano Mana Pia. We talked about him before, right? I remember the name.
We did. So. Yeah. He was on Top Turtle.
Oh, there you go. Yes.
Way back when. And then he stuck his head in a guillotine that it didn't belong in. So,
which is what happens when you talk to Gumby. Weird things happen to you.
Tabitha Ricci got good luck after talking to me.
It's true. Yeah, she looked so great against the returning mother, didn't she? All right. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode. We got a bunch more coming in your ear and eye holes or whatever orifice you stick us in. We got the road to UFC coming up. A whole bunch of fights, 20 fights in total. We will be breaking out over the next 2 days, Monday, Tuesday. So buckle up for that. Make sure you're properly hydrated for those shows. In the meantime, Discord is place to be, sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Discord. Twitter is SGPN MMA. He's at Gumby Vreeland. I'm at Jeff Fox Writer there and on Instagram. Get into my Substack, enter my pick'em contest at moneymma.substack.com. Listen to Gumby's Top Turtle MMA podcast, and he interviews interesting people, and sometimes interesting things happen to them after the fact. So make sure you listen to that. And make sure you go to our home base, which would be sportsgamblingpodcast.com for all our articles and giveaways and lots of good stuff. Goodies, podcasts, of course, sportsgamblingpodcast.com/store. So you can dress like a cool guy, and sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Patreon. So you can crush corporate gambling. Buckle up. We got lots more fights coming up, a whole week of picks coming for you. It will be me, the extraordinary gentleman, leading the way along with the Belizean warrior. And we'll talk to you tomorrow. See ya.